Jack, you can go first on this one. What is your very first move in the offseason if you are Kenny Payne?
You beg Al Ellis to come back
Okay.
because there's a lot that needs to happen for this team to improve. I know the what's his name, Dennis. I don't want to say Dennis Gates. I know it's not Dennis Gates. The recruit, the 5-star, the big man that just decommitted from Minnesota.
Dennis Evans.
Dennis Evans. There we go. I know Dennis Evans is a very big fish in the pond right now. Obviously, I mean, there is a little bit of irony that he's visiting UofL's campus this weekend when the ACC tournament's still going on, which shows how much confidence there is in an ACC tournament run for this current team. But hey, I guess you're getting a head start potentially. And if schedule conflicts come up, that's a very good unexpected problem to have if you're Kenny Payne and Louisville in that standpoint. So that's a big one. But for me, Al Ellis is the dude, the one guy that you can point in game out and say he's been there consistently, giving effort, playing well. And yes, he hasn't always shot the ball well, but that's because the usage rate, as you noted, is so incredibly high. You need guards if you're Kenny Payne, and you need more than one guard. You're going to need more than just Al Ellis. But if you already have Al Ellis back on the team, I know he said on this very podcast that he wasn't coming back next year. You make him say no as many times as possible before you give up on that, because he's a dude that I feel like you could actually build around. He's gone from early in the year, was like, okay, probably good scorer, bad team, kind of Monte Ellis-ish to compare to an NBA player, to where you look at it in some of the games he's had, it's like, okay, I feel like because I think there was the quote that said if he comes back to college, it would be at Louisville. He wouldn't his name the transfer portal.
That's what he said that.
But like if he were to enter the transfer portal, I feel like that's one dude that like everyone would want, that type of guy. Yeah. Like that would be, he would be one of the more coveted transfers in the portal. So yes, you're still going to have to add guys in addition to him if he were to come back. But when you already have, when there's all this talk is you got to nail the portal, you got to nail the portal, you got to nail the portal. There's one dude on this roster that would be one of those coveted types of transfers that you're trying to land that's already there. Maybe you should try and prioritize keeping him first.
Yeah, keep him out of the portal. Maybe it's a portal win in a different way. All right, well, that's cool. That's a good choice, and wasn't where my head was, but I'm always thinking. I guess I'm just thinking more 10,000-foot view. But I think that's a really good, pragmatic, good choice, because if you can get him kind of a floor managing point guard to work with, who can shoot it a little bit, who can take advantage of Ellis's driving ability and catch and shoot, you could be onto something. Or you find a shooting guard who can just catch and shoot, who can spot up for you. I think that's a good shout. Here's my choice, okay? I think that Kenny Payne needs to announce the morning after Louisville presumably loses in the ACC tournament, that the Louisville Cardinals are open for business. You've got to you've got to put the bat signal into the sky and say, no more of this. We don't want kids coming here just for NIL. You can say that in recruiting. You can talk to them about it. But publicly, man, open for business.
You know how you should announce it? You should just tweet out the Johnny Manziel money meme.
Yes. Yeah. There you go. I love that. I think that, the game is changing so rapidly, and you don't want to, maybe that sounds naive to people to just say we're open for business and all of a sudden, it's like now you print money and you're good. But I keep coming back to this, Jack. 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, we were just starting to talk about how the NCAA was not prepared for NIL stuff. The state legislatures were starting to do things. The NCAA had their legislation written up, and then they started to have issues trying to get to an agreement point on it, and eventually they just decided to do nothing and let the state NCAA. So NCAA, and I just it's crazy that that was already a year and a half ago. It feels like everything has changed so quickly, and that maybe that's the social media age, and I think the pandemic of all of us just being glued to our phones even more than we already were for 6 months or however long it was that people were kind of keeping to themselves. But it just feels like everything is very rapidly changing, and the inability to embrace NIL, or not, I should say inability, but the desire to be the opposite. Really, I can't quantify it. I can't specifically say player X didn't come to Louisville because of the NIL rhetoric that Kenny Payne had. But you got to figure that that's going to be a key part. You got, even if you think it's a mercenary, you got to get some dudes to come here to help you win some games. You got to win a lot more games next year. And then look, after that, yeah, go get you your 3-year kid who wants to be at Louisville and all that stuff. But this coming season, you got to go find some mercenaries who can help you out.
I'll compare it to this, and it's not apples to apples per se, but I remember when for those who don't know, I'm an Indiana graduate. Going into my senior year, which was the 2019-20 season, there was a lot of talk about Archie Miller and his recruiting class. And there were a lot of people that were excited about Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal kind of being the linchpins of the recruiting class. And the thought process was, okay, these are two guys you can bring in, you can develop for 2-3 years, and they'll be really good by the end of that. And my counter argument was, because Archie Miller was on the hot seat already at that point, I was like, when you're in that spot, you can't bring in developmental guys and have that be your entire recruiting class. Yeah. You got to get in some dudes that are going to be here immediately. And guess what happened on the IU side? Where 3 years later, Archie's not the coach anymore, and Trey Galloway's become a pretty good basketball player. That has potential to get even better. But but Archie Miller doesn't get to reap the benefits of that. Mike Woodson does. I get it, a little different year 4 between year 3 and 4 at that point. This is between years 1 and 2 for Kenny Payne. But for how bad this year went, there's going to be real pressure on Kenny Payne to not be a national title contender or anything, but to put a much more respectable product out on the floor. Yeah. To where, yes, if you get some guys that are some developmental pieces that can be good in a couple years, that's nice, but that's got to be rounding out the recruiting class or the transfer class. That can't be the entire class at this point. You need dudes, which the NIL is the number one way these days of how you can get that. But you need dudes that can come in at day one and be ballers. And that's
so Jack, I think the guys who we're talking about as like program guys, and I love, trust me, I love a program player who can play well for you for years. I feel like those are the guys already on the roster. You know, the guys like Mike James, the guys like JJ Traynor,
Kamari Lands, those dudes.
Kamari Lands, possibly. Yeah, I mean, I'm really intrigued to see how the wing position plays out, because we just named 2.5 guys, if you want to put Traynor in that conversation as a wing stretch forward type.
And the 2 freshmen you have are also
2 freshmen coming in are also wings. Glenn, I know, is also kind of that hybrid forward type. There's a lot of competition there. And so
when you're 427, I'd argue that's a good thing to have.
That's great. Yeah, you need all the bodies you can get. But yes, I am fascinated to see how quickly things develop. But I don't think there's any question that a lot has to change. For me, you got to be like, I know people, and I agree with this. I said it. I know that clip a couple, like 2 months ago, like everyone was like, went viral. People were not viral, but people.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. But Louisville fans were talking a lot about it. And that's cool. That's the point of the podcast. About NCAA tournaments in Louisville. Louisville should be in the NCAA tournament every season. That's like
a given.
Yeah, it's a given. Even if you're Syracuse level 3 years in a row, you're an 11 seed, Louisville should be in the tournament. Now, I think for next year, I will say that I think, considering everything that has happened, you got to go ahead and say, look, if Kenny Payne gets Louisville like in the NIT discussion, that is a significant step forward after this season. Now, I don't think that's not I'm not trying to lower the expectations or anything like that, but I do think that that is a conversation where, look, if Louisville goes, they play 31 games. If Louisville goes 18-13 next year or 17-14 after this season, I feel like a lot depends on how it gets to that point. Of course, this is a hypothetical, but in a vacuum, just a 13, 14, 15 win season better than it was the year before, improvement, 13, 14, 15 win improvement. That's a lot of wins, and that's hard to do in college basketball. I feel like that would be a step in the right direction. Is it enough? No. But I do think it's a step. It would be considered a step in the right direction.
I'll put it this way, because not all NIT teams are built equally.
Correct.
Like, there's a lot of different ways to put that. Like, if they're a game or two over 500 and they're like a 5 seed in the NIT, that's a lot different than being, like you said, 18, 13, 19, and 12.
Like a bubble team that doesn't get in.
Yeah, like I feel like if you're a bubble team and you just don't get into the tournament, I feel like, while year in, year out, that's not what people expect. Given everything, I think people would be okay with that. But I think that's kind of the minimum of where it needs to be. I don't know.
Interesting. Okay. So we're slightly off, because I think if they go 17-14, they're not a bubble team. Well,
I mean, let's look at some teams that are 17-14 right now, though. You say that, like, Michigan is 17-14 and in the first 4 out right now. And like,
but they're in the Big Ten, Jack. They're playing.
The Big Ten's not good. I mean, it's better than the ACC, but that's not saying
it's
much.
Better than the ACC.